Thank you, Andrew. Great to be here, and wonderful. Thank you for making the trip over. I hope you've come equipped with coffee and whiskey, because by Thursday, you're going to need both. And if you don't believe me, you will come Thursday. I really feel for you. This week is wonderful. We need to say a massive thanks to Ed and Frank for the huge amount of work they do to get this off the ground and to make it happen. But I'm conscious that this is tough for you guys. You get, what did Ed say, 20, 25 pitches with different churches. I was saying to Ron earlier, all you really need to know is everyone is called Andy, Dave, or John. Okay, pretty much 95% of us, and I'm in the Andy camp, which is at Andrew, and yeah, so wonderful to be with you. My name is Andy Young, and I am the church planting minister of Oxford Presbyterian Church. You should be getting one of these handouts, so do grab hold of that and take it home. I will be referring to it briefly as we go through, but I've got some more things to show to you. We all have a better half, don't we? Mine is Davinia. We've been married for 23 years, and I couldn't do what I do without her. I used to think that church planting was the hardest job in the world. It's not. It's the second hardest job in the world. Do you know what the first is? Being a church planter's wife. So do pray for the wives. We get all the glory, and they get all the hard work behind the scenes. So I couldn't do what I do without my wife, Davinia. I have four daughters. This is a picture of us on holiday in the Lake District, and there they are. We actually married our eldest, Alicia, off. One down, three to go. We married her off just a few months ago, but we love going up into the Lake District and having some holiday there. In 2018, I was sent by the denomination that Andrew just presented on, the Evangelical Presbyterian Church in England and Wales. I'd been minister in a place called Cheltenham, which is in the Cotswolds, and I'd been there for 10 years, and we'd been looking, being a church planting denomination, we'd been looking at planting in Oxford for some time. We'd actually tried to recruit several people to do it with great failure. I'd been at the hub of trying to find other people to do it, and I have this sneaking suspicion that actually they were trying to get rid of me. And it's very hard sacking a minister. It's much easier to get them burnt at the stake. So they sent me to plant the church in Oxford, and I'm still alive. They haven't burnt me at the stake yet, but I do have suspicions that might happen down the line. Just to say something about this, just to reiterate something that Andrew said, I'm incredibly thankful to be a Presbyterian. I'm a convictional Presbyterian. I believe the Bible teaches it, but I'm also a pragmatic Presbyterian. And I'm very thankful that I have not been sent out on my own and I have no accountability. Left to my own devices, I would build the kingdom of Andy Young. And I'd have every one of you worshiping down before me, because I'm that kind of guy. And aren't we all? We all want to, and that's why Presbyterianism is so beautiful when it works, as it should, is we hold each other to account. So every quarter, 4 times a year, I get an email from Andrew saying, we're having a church planting committee meeting. We want a report from your church plant. I have to turn up. I have to give a report. Sometimes I get hard questions about what I'm doing, and I love that. I think it's brilliant. And actually, you're not gonna. I'm gonna have to translate this illustration for you. Have you heard of the Wild West? Anyone heard of the Wild? You have. Wonderful. It's like the Wild West in the UK and Europe right now, because we have neglected ecclesiology. We have sent men out to do great work, and they've turned around and found no one's with them, and that has caused a devastation. And we've got to be holding each other to account. So I'm just very thankful that I have the accountability of my small but growing denomination behind me. This is the Radcliffe Camera Building, arguably the most photographed building in the world. You could never, I can get away with saying that because there's no way you can disprove me, can you? So it's the most photographed building in the world, the Radcam. That's right in the center of Oxford. And that is a very typical scene in this great historic city of Oxford. Sadly, Oxford, for all its beauty and its churchiness, on every corner, it looks like there's a spire and a church and a college chapel, and they're there. But the reality is that they're just a shell. There are other gospel preaching churches in Oxford which we partner with and we're thankful for, but they are few and far between. You'll see on the handout, Oxford is actually, it's crazy that I'm even planting a church there. It's a tiny place, relatively speaking. 170,000 populace. And yet what happens is you get 7 million plus tourists a year. There are 2 major universities with 32,000 plus students. And most people can't afford to live in Oxford. It's one of the most expensive places to live in Europe. And so most of the workers live out. And so the population sometimes triples in size every day just as people come in. And so it's become, because of the university, because of the history, it's become this key strategic place for the world. And so that was why we wanted to plant a church there for the gospel. I've already had one of you, which I love, say to me, so why are you planting a church in Oxford, Andy? Well, let me give you my 3 answers to that. There's more. I've already hinted at one, for the gospel. Okay, for the gospel, I'm a convictional Westminster Confession Presbyterian, and that means I love the gospel. Do you love the gospel? Do you love Jesus Christ? Isn't it amazing that we've got this good news to take to our world, that where dying, hell-deserving sinners can come and know the living God? And there are just not enough churches in our towns and cities. You could get very discouraged as you look out. We just heard about Lublin in Poland, 500,000 people, and maybe just a handful of churches that, you're in danger of hearing the gospel every now and again. We need more gospel preaching churches. So for the gospel, also as I've indicated, Oxford is a highly strategic place because the world comes to Oxford and then the world goes out back to the world. We just heard, didn't we, from one of the ladies over there, great word you said about, in many ways, sometimes mission comes to us. And that's very true in Oxford. We just have to stumble out of our front doors and we're on the mission field. And so many needs, and it's very strategic. It's likely that in the next decade, one of the next UK prime ministers will be studying at Oxford. About 80% of them have done historically. It's likely that the next world leaders that will change and shape governments and countries all over our world will be studying at Oxford. Just imagine with me, it's good to dream, isn't it? Imagine if we could just win a few of those people to Jesus Christ. And instead of, like in the 1970s and 80s, taking communism back to Cambodia, they learnt it in Oxford. The Khmer Rouge leaders learnt it in Oxford and slaughtered 3 million of their own people. Instead of that, imagine taking the gospel back and changing their countries. Instead of 3 million people dying, 3 million people coming alive in Jesus Christ. That's the kind of vision we need to have, and that's why we need churches in Oxford. But also for the Reformed faith. For the Reformed faith. I told you I'm a convictional Presbyterian, but I'm also a pragmatic Presbyterian. You may have heard of this thing that's been called the quiet revival. Have you heard of that in the West? Bible sales are through the roof. Young men in particular, under 25-year-old young men, are attending church in numbers we've never seen before. Now, there's an underbelly to that, and here's the underbelly, is that they're turning up, looking for the truth, looking for substance, authenticity, and transcendence, and they turn up at the Even Jellyfish Church, and they go, well, if this is what Christianity's about, I'm going to become a Muslim, or I'll go to Roman Catholicism. The wonderful thing when you're a Reformed Christian is we have all of those things. You haven't got to go and find it. You haven't got to go and start, some think tank in your church. You don't have to establish a new committee and say, well, what are we going to do with all these young people that are looking for substance, transcendence, and authenticity? All you got to do is go, we've already got it. We've got the Bible. We've got the gospel. We've got our rich Reformed history and heritage. We just now need to stop being ashamed about it and actually giving it, because that's what they're looking for. We have seen in Oxford a stream of not just young men, thankfully young women as well, coming looking for that. And one of our primary means of evangelism is Sunday morning. I'm sometimes asked, Andy, what do you do for evangelism? Sometimes when I apply for funding from PCA churches, I get this huge form. I love it. And I got to fill out, you want to know everything about me. How many times I've cut my nails in my lifetime, how many times I've eaten roast beef and had Yorkshire pudding, the whole thing. And one of the questions is often, how many times did you share the gospel this last year? And I always say this now, at least 104. We have 2 services, 52 Sundays a year. And I'm not great at maths, but I think 52 times 2 is 104. Because that's our primary means of evangelism. It's not the only thing we do. Primary means, is one of the most encouraging things I have is when I hear of one of our congregants saying, hey, Andy, I often get texts, Andy, pray for X. He's my friend. I've invited him to church this Sunday and he's coming. Wonderful. That's the best place. Now, this is not all we do, but that's where we start. And so for the Reformed faith, we need to be unashamed Reformed Christians holding out the rich history and substantive theology that we can offer to our world. I love this picture. It's never going to get an award for photography because it's grainy, out of focus. You can barely see it, but that was our first Bible study in April 2018. You can see how small we started. That's our front room, our lounge. And then over about 3 or 4 years, from 2018 to about 2022, 2023, we grew. This was where we met for our morning services in St. Luke's Chapel, and we were breaking fire code. Don't tell anyone. We were only allowed about 90 people, and we were regularly getting about 120 to our services. Bit of a nightmare. God wonderfully blessed us with a building right in the center of Oxford. This is a map of Oxford, and you can see the red and the slightly pink buildings are university buildings. And this building is right in the center. If you were to close your eyes and put your finger on the center of Oxford, you would hit our street. In fact, opposite this building is something called the Oxford Union. This is our building. Opposite it on the street, I often say if you're leaving our building, trip over, stumble, roll, stand up, you're in the Oxford Union. And the Oxford Union's been in the press recently, hasn't it, for lots of reasons. The president saying some nasty things about Charlie Kirk, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to get into that. But we're right in the center, right opposite it. This is when the building was built in the 1870s, and it became Grand Central Station for Christianity in Oxford, and actually in the world. The likes of Lloyd Jones, Dr. Michael Lloyd Jones, Francis Schaeffer, J.I. Packer, and John Stott all preached. Some were converted in this building, and I keep coming across 70, 80, 90-year-old Christians who say, oh, I went to that building when I was a student and I felt a call to mission. I've been in China for the last 50 years. So the Lord has given this building back to us. That's what it would have looked like in the 50s and 60s, and that's what it looks like right now. And it had become a restaurant, a very nice restaurant, by the way. They served a mean breakfast, but sadly, not so much, actually. Wonderfully, the restaurant closed because of COVID. Very long story. The Lord opened the door, and after a 3.5-year roller coaster, seeing some miraculous answers to prayer, both financially and otherwise, the Lord gave us the building, and we got in May 2023. This is what the basement of the building looks like right now. In fact, that looks through that room you can see through that's being redone is actually where John Owen in the 1950s rediscovered the works of, forgive me, John Owen wasn't alive. J.I. Packer, he felt alive to J.I. Packer. In the 1950s, rediscovered J.I. Packer the works of John Owen in that basement, and really Reformed publishing wonder that is, that we enjoy now is really traces its roots back to there. So that's what it looks like. By February, God willing, that will be open and we'll be able to use it. And then in the next year, this is an artist rendition of what the building's going to look like. Not dissimilar to this glorious building, reinstating a 3-sided gallery. Now, why do I tell you about that? It's not to do with the building. We're constructing, God willing, something for generations to come, where buildings are very useful. But it's not to do with the building. As we've already heard, and you've heard yesterday, it's about people. It's about doing the work of the ministry. It's very difficult. You ask church planters, one of the biggest headaches a church planter faces is, particularly in our very anti-Christian culture, is the threat of getting kicked out of their hired, rented venues. It's a major problem. So for stability and growth, having your own building can be huge. But it's not about the building. As much as we love the history and the beauty, it's not about the building. It's about the ministry. And actually, a problem we've got, I'll welcome you into the heart of Andy Young, is God has really blessed us on a capital side in terms of being able to get this building and fund the renovations. God has really blessed us. And people are looking on going, wow, you've got a building, you must be, rivers of gold are flowing out of Oxford Presbyterian Church. Sadly, there's something called operational funding as well. We tried to live on fresh air and it didn't work. And so things like salaries and paying overheads and expenses, that is a completely different side of the story. Capital side, praise the Lord. Operational side, well, I'll tell you a bit more about it in just a second. In terms of people, God has blessed us with, we don't have any deacons yet. We're praying for deacons, but we have Tom, who, is that working? Tom over there, that's one of our elders. He's a chaplain in a local school. Neil, who is actually working in the university, he's also an elder. And then there's myself as well. We have an MTW, fully funded worker, Robin Price, who's doing amazing work with the women in our church. And we currently have 2 interns. One of them's with me. I'm going to introduce you to him in a little bit. We have Gabby, who's doing a music internship with us. And then Jonathan Clark, who has just started an internship with us, who I'm going to mention and introduce you to in a minute. Very thankful for this young man here, Gareth Dix, who's here, and he's going to talk to you just briefly. We wonderfully managed to raise 1 year of funding for Gareth to come and help in the ministry of the church and have a particular focus on evangelism. And we would love to keep Gareth. And I'm going to intro you to Gareth now, and he's going to tell you a little bit about himself and the work he's doing. Thanks, Gareth.
Well, hi, everyone. It's great to be with you today. And I just want to tell you a little bit about my background and how I came to be in ministry and Oxford Pres and the opportunities there. So I'll begin by saying that I was born and bred in Oxford. So Oxford is very much in my blood, and I have a real heart for this city. I was brought up by Christian parents, but got saved when I was 23. Throughout my 20s, I had this burning longing to minister in the gospel. I wanted to share my faith. I wanted to share the gospel. And I explored a call to ministry. And so in 2010, I began training for ordained ministry as an Anglican minister in the Church of England. And whilst I was at theological college, as God's providence would have it, I had the opportunity to do a community placement in Bristol Men's Prison, which was a Category B prison. There's probably about 700-800 prisoners there. The chaplain there was a proper old-fashioned evangelist, gospel preaching. There was what can only be described as a revival happening in that prison. And I had the great privilege of seeing a number of men coming to faith. I learned how to preach in the prison chapel to prisoners. The chaplain said to me, just don't be boring, otherwise a fight will break out. So that's how I learned how to preach, just don't let the prisoners get bored or it will kick off. I saw a number of prisoners come into faith, in fact, including the most dangerous man in the prison at that time, who was on a 5-man unlock, which meant they had to be 5 officers before they opened the door. And I prayed with him through the door and watched the tears pour down his face as he gave his life to Christ. Saw some wonderful stories, too many to mention up here. But I took that burning desire to share the gospel and to evangelize the lost into parish ministry. It wasn't anything like the prison, but I did still have the great privilege of seeing people come into faith. I'd preach the gospel and people would come up to me and say, how do I become a Christian? I want to be born again. I want to be a Christian. I'd see people coming to faith, started an evening service, a monthly evening service that was about 100 people attending. We had evangelistic guest preachers, and I preached there myself in order to preach the gospel in the parish. In fact, at Christmas, we had over 300 people attending one of our services. That then led to me moving on to a larger church. So my role there was minister for evangelism in a large East London church. And amongst other things, equipping the staff and the church in evangelism, running Christianity courses and all that. One of the most effective things was just preaching the gospel in the evening service. I noticed that even though it was a big church, there wasn't a clear gospel message. There wasn't a clear call to repentance and faith. So I just started preaching the gospel, and the evening service grew massively. In fact, we'd gone from, I think it was about 100 when I started, it was nearly 200 when I left. People were inviting their friends along to hear the gospel. And saw a lot of fruit in that time. We'd go out in the street doing street evangelism once a month. And we'd see people coming along the following day to church that we'd met in Stratford Shopping Centre in East London. So there was a lot of fruit, but things started to go wrong for me. I noticed that my ministry was being opposed. We don't like you preaching penal substitution. We don't like you talking about hell and sin and judgment. And whilst the congregation, many of them loved it, the senior leaders didn't like the fact that it was a strong gospel message. And so I left there and went to a church planting project where my preaching was complained about by the rector of the sending church. This is supposedly an evangelical church, but it was an evangelifish church. And I was told that my preaching was upsetting some people. This rector complained to the archdeacon, and I was essentially released and given a payoff and released from that church. However, one lady did get converted under my preaching, and she went and joined an FIC church, and 2 of her family members subsequently came to faith in that church. So God was still doing things even through all that. So I left the Church of England in 2022. I spent a 3-year exile out of ministry, including 2 years working in a shop selling hi-fi equipment. I still shared my faith there. I shared my faith with everyone from the shop manager to the retail's operations manager who told me off for preaching at him. I was just sharing my faith with him. And even the CEO, when he came to visit, I shared my faith with him as well. So I still kept sharing my faith, even though I was in a shop. But the elders at Oxford Pres very kindly raised the funding for me to leave the shop. I joined there as a member of the congregation early 2023 and became a member. And the elders and Andy very kindly raised the funding for 12 months so that I could serve as a minister. So I'm serving there, and my desire really is for Oxford Pres to reach Oxford with the gospel and to disciple them in a church that is biblically confessional and reformed. As Andy rightly pointed out, plenty of jellyfish churches where people come along and find it's a mile wide and an inch deep, and they don't really grow in their faith. So I'm hoping to secure funding in order to be able to continue in full-time ministry at Oxford Pres. I think it would be such a shame, having got back out of secular work and back into ministry, to then have to leave full-time ministry after only a year and go back into secular employment. But that would have to happen if I'm not able to find the funding. I would love to be able to help them with the preaching and teaching and pastoral and operational side as well, but also focusing on the lost in Oxford and that opportunity to reach all the lost there. We see a lot of people coming through our doors. There's a large footfall right in the centre of town. In fact, as Andy mentioned, there's a real hunger in Oxford for the gospel. Just 2 Sundays ago, I was preaching in the evening service. I presented the gospel to 6 unchurched young men who were visiting for the first time. We have wonderful opportunities. And so I just also close by saying, wonderful opportunities there. I think also that the Westminster Seminary moving in next door is also exciting. My hope and prayer is that people will come to Oxford Pres, get saved, and be brought on in their faith, and perhaps even go and serve the Lord in ministry later on. I share wholeheartedly in the elders' vision to reach Oxford for the lost, to see people converted and saved and brought on, and God willing, even released into some form of ministry. Thank you for listening.
Hope you can see why we were keen to get Gareth. I'll tell you a quick story. I don't want to embarrass him, but he was accosted a few months ago by a Jehovah's Witness on the streets of Oxford, and you should probably pray for the JW, because I'll just say at the end, the JW was running away. As Gareth said, no, you need to repent. And so we would love to keep Gareth for years to come. We do need extra funding. I'll mention it again. But part of what this is going on here is one of our challenges in Oxford is we can't even catch breath. There are so many opportunities, gospel opportunities, that we just need more people alongside us trying to meet those opportunities. Our motto actually on eldership is, don't mess it up, don't burn out, because they're our 2 biggest challenges. Let me just give you a bit more of a flavor of what's going on. This is us in the Northgate Hall. That was taken a couple of weeks ago. We need the gallery put in. We're struggling for space. We can currently get about 190 people sat in our building, and we're in danger of maxing out every Sunday morning right now. This is us. Once a month, we have a lunch together, so we fellowship together as well. Just a quick story of conversion. This was a young student who turned up as an atheist in Oxford. One of my elders, Neil, did an amazing job of discipling him, of sharing the gospel with him over 18 months, every week, meeting with him. And then a year or so ago, he professed faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. And he asked for baptism. We told him he needed to have baptism. And I said to Neil, you need to baptize him. Neil's a teaching elder. So, and I said, you've done the hard work. You should baptize him. So joyfully, Neil baptized him. And then just a few weeks later, actually, another local Oxford guy. You'll see Gareth standing there as well. This is a guy who had professed faith in Jesus Christ, but had kind of wandered, had never been baptized, and partly through Gareth's ministry, partly through me connecting with him, discipling him, he came forward and was baptized as well. And he's got a number of issues. He has a number of health issues. He turns up at church with Ray-Bans, black cap, bomber jacket, black jeans, and sneakers that are worth probably $1,000. And he sits at the back of church, and I just love preaching to him. He loves God's word. He just sits there like this, drinking it up. Amazing, amazing story of what God is doing. We also have a student work. So during term time, every Tuesday, so it's happening tonight. Jonathan, who helps, I'm going to introduce you to him now, is going to have to get back. He can't stay the day. He's got to get back to help at this student work. We give them pizza, and then this was taken, I think, last week. There's Neil again, who is teaching, and we give them hour and a half of in-depth Bible study. It's really rich, and they absolutely love it. And our student work doubled last year. We were getting about 15, 20 students. We're now getting regularly 35, 40, and if everyone turned up, we'd have more like 50 or 60. So do be praying for that, and I'm going to mention that in terms of funding. I'm almost done. I'm going to introduce Jonathan, but Gareth just mentioned a very exciting development for us. There's a small, growing seminary was in Newcastle, and they are moving down to Oxford, Westminster Seminary, UK. God has wonderfully given us, you see, this is our building here. That's our building there. Do you notice this building right next to it? God has, not only have we've got this building, and there's renovation working. See actually the new windows going in right as I was taking that shot. This is a 4-story office block next to it, and God has wonderfully given us that building as well. And we were sitting there thinking, okay, well, we can use some of it for church, but we don't need all of it yet. So we started thinking, who could we invite to come and partner with us? And I won't bore you with the details, ask me later. Westminster Seminary were looking to move to Cambridge, but couldn't find a building to go to. So we said, why don't you come and have a look at this? And so they're going to be moving and starting classes in September 2026. Very, very excited about that, because one of the challenges that we have is we need a pipeline of men coming through for ministry. But to do that, you've got to, and I want to encourage you with this, because I'm about to introduce you to Jonathan. We need to invest in young men early. And that's sometimes going to mean you need a commitment. I've got several young men who I could fund through seminary. And it's absolutely necessary to do that, to get them to dig deep wells. But they're not going to be in ministry for another 4 or 5 years, because they've got to get through seminary first. That's going to take a longevity of thinking that I'm asking you to think about, to invest in people. It's people. Christ sent his disciples. We need to invest in people for the gospel. So we're really excited about that. We have on your handouts, we have budgetary needs, but the 3 things I wanted to draw your attention to, that's on your handout, so I'm going to flick off it now quickly, is we've already been introduced to Gareth. To keep Gareth, we're looking at $60,000. I'll put it in dollars for you, $60,000 to continue his vital work of evangelism. So I just want to encourage you to think about that and to help us fund Gareth to continue to do that work. And then there's also Jonathan. I'm going to hand straight over to him, and then I'll say a little bit more, and I'm almost done. You need this, don't you? Good man.
Perfect. Okay. I'm Jonathan Clark, and like Andy said, I'm the intern for Students and Evangelism at Oxford Pres. I didn't realize the elders' motto was don't mess up, don't burn out. I never knew that. I don't think I've messed up too badly. The burnout, ask me tonight after Rooted, and we'll see how things are going. So I grew up in Manchester in northwest England, and I came down to Oxford to study history in 2022. On my first Sunday in the city, I arrived at Oxford Pres. It was kind of the first church that was on my radar that I wanted to go to, and really loved it. I loved the Bible teaching, I loved the style of worship, I loved the community there, I loved being part of a church that had students, that had families, and that felt like a place I could be at home. So 3 years on, I'm really excited to be working for them. While I was a student at Oxford, I realized that I really loved doing Christian ministry. I was doing a lot with the Oxford Christian Union at that time, so I was flyering for outreach events, I was helping plan those events, I was reading through the Gospels with some of my non-Christian friends as well at the same time. So it feels like a real privilege now to be in the position where I can do this full-time, be mentored by Andy, and also to work with Gareth on planning the outreach that we're going to do as a church to bring the good news of Jesus into the city of Oxford. In terms of, hang on, let's just check here we go, sorry. Yeah, as Andy said, it's an incredibly exciting time to be looking at going into ministry in the UK. The church is probably, I think, in a position now that it hasn't been for many decades. We're seeing, like Andy said, so much more interest. For me, especially as a young man, being able to reach out to my peer group, to seeing other young men coming into church of a similar generation of me, maybe with similar interests, is incredibly exciting. 5 years ago, I had no idea that I would be in Oxford. I didn't plan necessarily to come to uni here. I certainly didn't think I'd be working for a Presbyterian church. Didn't think I'd be stood in London pitching to a group of American Presbyterians for funding. This was not on my plan at all. So I can't promise you, I don't know where I'll be in 5 years' time. I don't know what I'll be doing. But I love the fact that God has brought me here, and I can't wait to find out where God takes me in 5 years, where he calls me to serve him. And I'd love to have you on board for that journey. One of the favourite things I got to do while I was studying at Oxford, there were loads of great things about being an undergrad at Oxford. But one of the best things I got to do was I got to read through the Gospel of John with some non-Christian friends. One of my friends, she'd grown up in a completely atheist background. Do pray for her, she's still not yet a Christian. But I remember her reading out loud as she went through the Gospel of John. She was reading John 2, where Jesus makes the whip, drives the moneylenders out the temple. And as she's reading, she just stops and she goes, oh, wow. As she met with a Jesus she didn't expect. This wasn't the sort of behaviour she expected from Jesus Christ. And my prayer, my hope for the future years is that there are many more oh wow moments for the people I meet, as I can point them to a Jesus they haven't met before, a Jesus they don't expect, and a Jesus they desperately, desperately need. So thanks for listening.
Great work. So be excited. The Lord is at work. If the gospel is going to advance in the UK, we need men to be raised up to advance that gospel. Help us. I wanted to say a really big thank you to Oak Mountain Pres. I can see Tom at the back there. We can see you, Tom. So you try to sneak in quietly at the back. It was through a generous, very generous gift from Oak Mountain that has enabled us to open the door for Jonathan to do his first year of internship. We would love to give Jonathan a second one with the potential of starting to train for ministry at Westminster Seminary, UK. Just 2 more slides. If you don't have $60,000 and you don't have $30,000, but you check in your back pocket and you got $10,000 and you're not sure what to do with it, our student ministry is growing. It costs to do the work we're doing with them, and so that's another aspect of a specific need we'd love your help with. You've heard enough from me, but one final thing. This has become a bit of a catchphrase of mine, and I think a bit of an informal catchphrase for the UK partnership. It's this, that in the UK, we are opportunity rich and resource poor. We got way too many opportunities. I'm tempted to get Andy Longway to lock the doors, and you're not allowed out until you all quit your jobs and sign on the dotted line that you'll come and minister in the UK. And I can tell you, we'd find jobs for you within 5 minutes, and you would be overwhelmed within 10 minutes. There is so much work to do. Opportunity rich, resource poor. We're growing, and sometimes that growth gives financial stability. Sometimes the growth actually gives financial instability because there's more work to be done. So please, we would love your help, prayers, and support. Thank you very much.